Hello and welcome to another episode of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. I am Rico, and I'd like to remind everyone that I am not a doctor, I am not a therapist, and I am not a medical professional in any way. Just a regular person trying to navigate through life and trying to navigate what's going on in here. Like I mentioned before, I've come a long way, but I still have a long way to go. I have a better understanding of things, but I still have a lot that I don't quite understand. And that's why I'm keeping on with making these videos, because I just want to talk through my experiences. I want to talk through those feelings, and I want a better understanding of, my reactions and interactions with people in situations. So for this video, I want to get back to the status of my deteriorating marriage. Last video, 2 videos ago, I mentioned that I decided I was going to move out and find somewhere else to go. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. It was just, I was just feeling like I was unwanted and I didn't belong in my own house. So I started looking elsewhere. At the time, I was working at a coffee shop, and I had some friends here and there that I had made from working there. And once in a while, somebody from my past would pop up. Somebody just out of nowhere, just randomly show up, and I would see people. And at the time that I decided I was going to start looking, I didn't know where I was going to go. I had no idea. I had no ideas on nothing. I just knew I had needed to get out. And I had run into some old friends. And when I say that, they seemed to be friends, but they turned out not to be so much. But anyway, I hadn't seen them in a while, and they were old friends from my church days. We used to do small groups with these guys. They lived down the street from us at the time, and since then they had moved somewhere else, so I hadn't seen them in probably a couple of years. And small talk, how's it going? I just mentioned my situation. I mentioned what I was going through, and just told them how it was, and I was looking to get out. So they offered me a place to stay. They had a kind of a decent house. They lived in a nice neighborhood. It was close to the beach. And they said I could stay in their basement. And the basement was pretty spacey, and it had its own little bathroom. So it was nice. It was nice to, have somewhere that I could go. So I grabbed a handful of my things, not everything. I just grabbed necessities and some things that I thought could, be entertaining. And I moved in with them, and I lived in their basement. And it was like all of my situations. It started out fine. Everybody was good. Everybody was civil. And, they just decided they would let me stay there until I could find somewhere more permanent, until I could find my own place. I never intended on staying there. I just knew it was a transitional place. I knew I wasn't going to be there for very long, but apparently I'd gotten too comfortable. They very soon started to show their true colors, as people often do. They, it was a nice house, and let me just say that they lived their lives in a more traditional family sense. And when I say that, I mean like the man works, the mom stays home. They were still going to church, but they had the ideas of the wife submits to the husband and he makes the decisions. He's the man, blah, 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 blah. And it was very, very familiar. It was very familiar to my childhood. Here I am, a grown man living in a basement, and I have these people that are pushing the man is right and he makes all the decisions crap, just like my parents. So I am going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. I am on the topic of moving out of my house and moving in with some former acquaintances. They offered me their basement and let me move in. And like I said, it was a nice neighborhood. It was a decent house. It was kind of spacious. And it was comfortable. It was all right. It was nice at first. But after a little while, and like I had mentioned, they were a more of a traditional church family values type of family. There was three kids, and you know the dad was the head of the household, and he made all the decisions, and he was the only one that worked, and then she stayed home. And I don't have anything against the way people live their lives. Live your life how you feel fit for you. But them having these traditional values, it didn't take very long for them to start treating me like I was a kid. They treated me like I was just kind of dumb, and they always had this superiority complex. Again, I don't know what it is with people and what it is about me that brings that out of people. I kept getting the attitude that this is my house. I got a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot. They would complain about little things like dishes, or they would complain about where I parked my car. They would complain about just little things. I had my dogs there. They would kind of take care of my dogs. And then when I was at work, and then I would come back and they would have just little comments about, oh, he was doing this or he was doing that. And it was just little complaints, little things. And it reminded me of my parents. It reminded me of my dad with the this is my house. It reminded me of my parents because it was the you should do this, you should do that. They would kind of listen to me a little bit about my situation and my stories, and they would just kind of dismiss it, and then go into their little biblical tirade of the Bible says you should, and try to quote scripture. And again, I still don't know how to really stand up for myself, so I would just kind of listen and go along. I would try to be truthful with everything, but their attitudes of my way is the right way, and this is how you should do it, and you need to listen to me, and you need to do this and you need to do that, when I'm a grown man who's just having a hard time and trying to get along and trying to move along. They wanted to control things. They wanted to control who I had over, which I didn't really have people over very often. But the one time I did, they interjected themselves into a situation that they had no business being in. They had no boundaries. Again, it was my house. This is my house, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't taking advantage of anything. I wasn't overstepping my bounds. I wasn't doing anything wrong. They just felt the need to exert that little bit of control. They needed to make sure that I knew that it was their place and their rules, and they did it every day. And it was extremely frustrating. I'm having a hard time with my marriage falling apart, and now I move in with these people and they're just treating me the same way as my parents did. I did keep myself from lashing out at them. I did keep myself from getting upset. And, I did what I could to just get along until I could get out. And after a couple of months, and because I was having a hard time finding somewhere, they decided, we're going to give you 3 weeks and you have to get out. Just like that. We don't want you here anymore. So I started packing up my stuff. I packed up the non-essentials, things that I had, and took it back to my house. And I started looking for somewhere to live. And somewhere else to live, I should say. But I'm going to get back to that in this next segment after this quick break. And I'll be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. I'm on the topic of moving out of my house when my marriage was deteriorating and living with some old acquaintances. I guess they were friends at the time, but you know, I stayed with them. They exerted their authority. They made sure that I knew that they were in charge and it was their place. Uh, tried to tell me how to do things, tried to make me I feel like and I don't know if they did this on purpose or not, but they I feel like they tried to make me feel guilty for staying there. They tried to make me feel like they were trying to force my appreciation. And I knew I didn't want to stay there anymore. So they had asked me to move out. And slowly I started packing up my things. I did have to take some stuff back to the house in Hobart, but I started packing up my things. And I truly feel like that friendship was severed at that point. I thought they were good people, but having lived with them and then seeing how they treated other people, it wasn't it wasn't anything I wanted to be around anymore. I never talked to them again after that. I just kind of cut off all communication. I hadn't talked to them in a while before that anyway. But after that, I don't want to be involved with people that are just going to treat me like that. So I severed the friendship and just let it go. They were just nosy, and I was mentioning how they complained about little things. Um, she had a college education, even though she stayed home with the kids, and pretty much made sure I knew that every time we talked about something. Like she just had to make sure that I knew that she was smarter than me, which I don't care. I don't care if you go to college. I don't care if you dropped out of high school. I don't care. If you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're not, you're not. And I can usually tell. I don't want to say that they were bad people, but they just weren't as good of people as I thought they were. And with that, I can only handle being around someone for so long, and then I just make my way. So I got all my stuff out of there, got myself moved out, and working at that same coffee shop. I mentioned before how I had made a few friends and a few acquaintances by working there, meeting customers, meeting people that were decent people, and I had a friend that knew what I was going through, and while they were in the shop, started looking online just to see if there were any like rooms available. Sometimes people will rent out just a room. And this person found me a room in Valpo, which was a lot closer for my work because where I was living with the other acquaintances was a little bit farther. And, this brought me into Valpo while I was working in Valpo, and I was happy about that. So they found me a room to rent. And the thing that attracted me to that place more was the dogs were allowed and there was no lease. It was just you pay month by month and just go like that. I was having a hard time financially because my paychecks were being deposited into the bank account and I was more or less just living on the tips that I was making. And that was very difficult. Anytime I needed money or something, she would just kind of complain and act like it was all for her and the boys and I didn't deserve any of it. Even though I worked for it and earned it, I didn't deserve it. So I found this room, and again, it was okay in the beginning, but much like all the other situations, it was only okay in the beginning. There were two other people that were living there, and they had a couple of dogs. And then there was still a third room that was going to be rented out to somebody else. And, everyone just kind of kept to themselves and kept their own space. And it was a decent situation. But I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with a little bit more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. I am on the topic of me moving out of my house, separating from myself from my marriage, and just finding my own way, or at least trying. I found a room in Valparaiso, or at least a friend helped me find this room, and it was decent because I could take my dogs, I could go there, and my initial thought was I could go to work. These guys would take care of my little dogs for me while I was at work, and then I could come home and everything would be fine. There was no leases uh, at first, but for some reason, and I'm not saying it's always right, but my intuition usually is a correct feeling for me. Usually, when I have a bad feeling about something or a good feeling about something, I'm right. Not always, not always. Sometimes I get a bad feeling and it turns out to be the opposite, which is a nice surprise. But I had a feeling about these people and I didn't trust them with my dogs. And the only person that could watch my dogs for me, the only person willing to do it for me was my sister, and she lived in Portage. Now, I lived in Valpo, I worked in Valpo, but every day I had to get up and take my dogs to Portage, drive back to Valpo, work my day, drive back to Portage, and come back home to Valpo. Now, Valparaiso to Portage is not a quick, easy drive. It's not a 10-minute drive. It's kind of a haul. And I was doing this every day that I worked. And it was frustrating, and I was spending so much money on gas. And it was just a difficult situation. I want to mention as well that the room that I rented was kind of a hole in the wall. It was a decent house, but it was run down. It was obviously somewhere that they just rented out to people and didn't really care to upkeep it at all. It was just crappy. It was crappy. My room was small, so I could only take so much with me. All I had room was all I had room for was like a couch and my TV, and I had to sleep on the couch, and I had my little mini fridge where I could put my stuff, and it was it was doable, but it wasn't ideal. And out of the blue, the house owner decides, "Oh, we need to have leases. You need to sign a lease if you want to stay here. You need to sign a lease." And I didn't want to sign a lease for somewhere I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be there to begin with. And now he wants me to sign a lease for an entire year, which I knew I wasn't going to stay there very long. I was looking for a place. Luckily for me, I found an apartment. And at the time, it was affordable. It was in Valpo. They allowed pets. All of the requirements were acceptable for me. And I was able to get out of there because that entire experience was pure torture. Driving back and forth, not trusting people, trying to lock my room. And I'm not saying that they were going to do anything, but when you have anxiety, your brain will lie to you sometimes and tell you things that aren't true. Now, I was getting worried and I was thinking that they were going to break in and take all my stuff, and they never did. They never did anything like that, and they never did anything to make me think that. It was just my own brain lying to me and telling me that was going to happen. This all goes back to my parents and making me afraid of everything, making me think that everyone is out to get me, everyone wants to take my stuff, everyone wants to hurt me, which is not true. Not true at all. But in the back of my mind, because of those roots are running deep, I'm sitting here thinking that everyone's out to get me. Everyone's out to take stuff from me. Everyone wants to hurt me. So I was barely moved into that place and I was already looking for the apartment. And like I said, luckily I had found a place. It was close by, so I didn't have to travel very far to move my stuff, at least from the room to the apartment. And it was nice because I finally felt like, for the first time in my entire life, for the very first time, For the very first time, I had my own place. I wasn't living in a house where I didn't feel like I didn't belong. I wasn't living in someone else's house. I wasn't living in a rented room where I had to share everything. I finally had my own place. And that was a good feeling. It was affordable. It was close. It was nice. It was on the bottom floor. Um, and it was just like it all worked out. After all of that torment and torture, I finally found somewhere where I could go and be by myself and decorate this place the way I wanted. And it was all mine. Finally. And looking back, I kind of wish I had done that when I was young, but I keep mentioning I can't go back and change anything. And I try to live without any regrets. I just do wish that I had done things a little bit different. You know, instead of moving in with somebody right away when I was young, I wish I had gotten my own place just to get that sense of self and being an individual. But I will get into that in the next episode. And I would like to conclude this video by saying thank you again. I appreciate all of you. I'm glad you're here. I'm so happy that you've stayed with me this long. I'm so glad with those of you that have watched all of my videos and listened to me rant about my my difficult life. I don't mean to complain about it all. I just want to sort through it and work through it and kind of navigate through my brain and try to work through things. And, maybe I can get a better understanding and then I can control myself in situations better. And that's really all I'm looking for. And I'm also looking for connection. I want people to relate. I want people to connect. I want everyone to just support each other. There are people that could have had similar situations and they know what it's like. We can all work together and we can all help each other out. We really can. Instead of all the competitiveness that I've dealt with in my life, we could just put that aside and just help each other out. Nobody is better than anybody else. And we could just really just be there for each other. And we really could. So thank you again from the heart of my bottom. I thank you all for being here. Please, please like, share, subscribe, share as much as you can. I know there are others that could benefit a little bit from these videos. I'm not saying I'm going to help or fix anything for anyone, but it is nice to know that we're not alone and some of us have had similar situations. So I thank you again, and I'll be back very, very soon with another episode of This is Rico Trying to Heal My Inner Child. Thanks.